My name is Devin Blaskovich. I am a photographer based in New York. I make work about medium expression and I work within fashion. I first started taking photos because I was touring and doing all these other things and just wanted to document that, and I was also doing a lot of like hallucinogens at the time, so I was doing like a bunch of acid and shit and like wanted to document that experience. So like bought a film camera, started like taking these photos when I was like on tour and stuff, and then like uploading them back when like Flickr was still a thing. And then the first pack of Polaroid film I ever bought, I like won. It would happen to be Polaroid Week on Flickr, which is still a thing on Instagram, I think. But like, I won one of their contests, and they gave me an SX70, and then like they're like, come into the office, and then they gave me a job. Like it was like pretty, just fucking like went straight for it. So when they offered me this job, I like got to grow with the medium and see like Impossible turn now Polaroid like spiral into this like cultural zeitgeist and this like, you know, good chemistry, and now it's like totally in the popular culture. So like the tangibility of it, obviously there's like all those like caveats and tropes like, oh, you can hold it and it's real, but like I do think that just the intention of choosing is one of the only choices we have as an artist. I don't think it's better or worse, that it's just like that color palette and that medium and how you use that camera is my choice. It's not the best choice, but I think when you say that you're choosing something for a reason, it's better than choosing it because you don't have a reason, just doing it to do it. That idea of like working with the Polaroids, and I used to shoot a lot of 8x10, so like it was the only medium available that I could really afford because Polaroid then started sponsoring me and giving me film and stuff. It just has its own color palette, and that color palette keeps changing as they keep changing the film, and I liked growing with that process and knowing that like, oh yeah, you can shoot Portrait 400 at 100, overexposed by 2 stops, meter for the shadows, shoot outside, and since the dawn of time, it will always look the same. Whereas like working with a medium that changes with you and like always figuring out the kinks and working on better emulsions, especially like in the early days, was like a exhilarating experience. And you always want to be like, oh, I got the best shot of like this 3-month batch of film. And like, I think that that is like a unique period of time that people don't get the opportunity to experience, like working with something that's actually new and changing. I just personally like the palette and I like the process of shooting it. Like I like using the specific cameras and I like how they feel. I think they unlock a different part of my brain than working with digital, but I wouldn't say like for everyone to do that. Like I think it's very much like keep experimenting and find what you like, because I think a lot of people just like fuck using an RB67 because it's the heaviest camera and maybe that interferes with their connection with their subject, and then I would say then don't use that camera, or like don't use film. If digital is easier for you to like, maybe you're insecure about how you're lighting something and like shoot digital and you'll have a better experience than like the anxiety of shooting on film then waiting to get it back to see if you fucked it up or not. You know, like I think the film affects how I work and I try to exemplify that within my own work, but I don't think everyone should be doing that, and I think it's all kind of based on personal experience. I know exactly how Portrait's gonna look 2 stops overexposed, like with studio light or consistent light, but like if you don't know that, then like maybe shoot the digital because that will make you feel more comfortable, and then you can dive into the real thing, which is like taking a good photo, like let alone what the fuck it's on. Like a good photo on digital is a good photo, and like I think people like forget about that and they think that like, oh, a bad photo is good because it's on film. I failed as a freelancer, I think, twice so far. Like, I think I started trying to freelance full-time doing like film, I think in 2014, like right after Impossible closed, and I just like didn't make enough money, didn't book enough jobs, got another job somewhere else. And then after that, you know, like between Lomography closing and working at this agency, I tried to pan out and see like if I could freelance full-time shooting the way that I was shooting, and like I did have to modify that, and that did affect like how I felt about a lot of the work. So like I didn't publish any of the advertising jobs I did last year because I didn't like too many of them, because I had to shoot a certain way that wasn't what I was like super stoked on, but it was just something that I like needed to be done. You know, then it goes into this year and it's like they only see these fashion editorials that are like paid out of pocket, and they don't see that you do work for client money. So like public perception of like me right now looks like, oh, he's like just shooting some magazine stuff, like how does he make his money? Like he's not showing, like I'm not showing those ad work, so it doesn't look like I'm bookable for shooting film for like a fashion campaign, for example, versus a print editorial. Well, I think that everyone has their own like perception of how they want things to come out and how they want to present it, and social media is that. Like everyone's Instagram is their own like personal magazine. And like no one looks at people's websites anymore. No one really goes on people's blogs on like a daily basis or weekly basis. So like the way you present your work and curate that and organize it on social media is like your version of saying like what you think is best out of the stuff that you're doing. Your social media and how you present it is how you want the world to see your work. And I think that that shows like the value of the editing process and stuff that you hold valuable about your work, not the other people. One of the iconic famous photographers, Mark Lebon, he says that he regrets that he didn't use social media until when he's old now. And he's like, yeah, but I had to get on it because if I died, the only thing people would notice was like him shooting for Buffalo and him shooting Madonna for the Face magazine. And he's like, I hate those photos. So I need my own perception of what people will remember me for. And I think that that Instagram is like a good platform for that. I'm definitely like a photographer's photographer. Like I'm not like a people's photographer. I think that there's like a shift in that. Like I think that more people that understand imagery respect the work that I make more so than people that don't. And I think that there's like two kind of versions of that. There's like people that make work that want to be publicly consumed, and then there's people that are making work to inform and teach. I used to teach a lot of photography. Like I taught for like ICP and Ilford and Kodak and Polaroid and fucking across the spectrum. So like that idea of like if you can take an image and then a photographer will look at it and be like, how the fuck did he do this? Because they know that medium. And like, I think pulling the best quality out of it in the subtleties is like something that I try to do. So like, you know, shooting a duochrome image, like a blue and black, like Polaroid, and then informing that with like, you know, a red neon or a different color, or seeing like a stop sign that's blue, or like something like that, or like something you perceive that you think you know, and then seeing it in a completely different way based on this is the only way that you could do that. Is like, I think, formally interesting. Choosing with different films like the Ferrania film or like old Italian film and using that to shoot, you know, film noir Italian, like styled shoot. So like the medium informs upon the work as well. So like there's a layout, there's subject, there's content, and that's like me working within the context of fashion, but the other stuff is also so like self-referential. I think it's just trying to make something kind of new or something that people haven't seen before. I think that the reference is like the death of the like original image. Like everyone now is shooting this like swipe art where it's like, oh, let's make a mood board and let's mimic these exact shots. So the reference for your photo shoot is another photo shoot. And like the idea that like artists in every other medium besides our own make references to things that are not directly related aesthetically and formally to what you're creating with. Like Philip Glass, the composer, was working with like Richard Serra, a huge like monolithic metal sculptor. They like had a moving company together and they just like made shit. And then they were referencing like the Guggenheim's current exhibitions, but those were paintings. Like he made like a rubber sculpture that mimicked a Jackson Pollock splatter painting in that formal process. So like they're not direct reference, but you can see there's an inspiration there. And we as photographers don't, not as much anymore, take reference from anything other than other photographs and other photographers. That's like not great because you're just referencing and referencing a reference that already had a reference that you don't even know. Like, you know, like word shooting like the Jill Sander 96 campaign, not knowing that that was a reference from like a Francis Bacon painting or something, you know? So I always try to like have the idea that you can reference or you can make work that expounds upon an idea and a concept that's not directly just another dude's photo shoot from like the fucking 80s. Like, you know, like you can make stuff that's not inspired by another photograph, but you can be inspired by other things. And I think that people kind of lost that for a little bit, especially with like these regramming and reposting and like presets of like your color palette to match another photographer's color palette, like that idea. Just the moment, like living, and like I think that everyone should be more inspired by like experiences, like sensory experience. Like just when you see something, you can be inspired by a motif or a light, or just like how something bends around a corner, or this process of walking, or you can be inspired by music, you can be inspired by a feeling. I do think that like the biggest failure of photography now is that you can't create something that's a feeling because inherently you're capturing something. I'm inspired by the idea that like I can write a song and create something out of nothing, out of the ether for someone because I love them. But I can't make a photograph because inherently you have to document something. So I think that that exploration of trying to capture a specific feeling, maybe it doesn't translate, but that's also, you can capture something that reminds you of something beautiful or a beautiful song, but making a good image that can show other people that same feeling is like super interesting. And if you can do it, then you're like a genius. Like.